Greetings, we're going to just do a short video and we're going to create a pivoting sequential chain that uses pivot chords. I'm saying inspired by Wagner because, a lot of people are inspired by Bach harmony, okay? Well, they have the saying, there was pre-Wagner harmony and post-Wagner harmony because he pushed that same system that Bach was using to its very limits. Wagner was both a master at chromatic modulation as well as pivot chord sequential chains. And I'm currently creating a course on pivot chord modulation because this is a very, very gray area for a lot of people. So what we're going to do is we're going to assume we're in A minor and we're going to travel in a clockwise fashion. So just for the sake of it, let's just establish A minor, 5-1. Okay, so let's go from A minor to a C chord. That's the 3 chord in A natural minor, which is the 6 chord in E minor, 6. Then we go to the 2-5-1. We're going to repeat this sequence. It's always a 6-2-5-1 to a new key. If you know functional harmony, that should make perfect sense to you. At this time, you could just keep repeating that and go all the way through the circle of fifths in a clockwise fashion, but it's not very musical. So in other words, adding sharps, then going to flats and removing flats. If you're aware of Wagner's Parsifal sequence, he goes to that 1-3 like that in root position from the minor 1 to the 3 chord. But I don't want to do that. In a very stepwise fashion, giving us good voice leading. So first inversion, C major, 7th. F sharp half diminished. Now we're in E minor. F sharp half diminished in first inversion. 5, B. Now we have something that's sequential that can actually repeat. I'm doing it really slow. And you should always do things really slow until they're memorized. When it comes to harmony, not keyboards. Now I'm just repeating this process. Adding sharps. Now I'm going to stop there. From that A minor chord, we've now traveled and started to add sharps. Clockwise, but it's still kind of lacking something, but we'll play through it anyway. I'm intentionally stopping at the 5 of F sharp minor because you don't want to do these kind of sequential patterns forever because you want to break free of them eventually. So I wrote everything out for you here. Again, we're going to assume that we're starting in A minor. So you see the pivot chord is going to be the 3 chord of natural minor. Remember, all forms of minor are used with minor. Once we establish A minor, let's actually use the pivot aspect as something we could repeat. We've already pivoted now. The pivot doesn't have to actually occur within a sequence. Jump down, do a different variation in voicing. Same chord sequence. Now, let's do this sequence again, but now we have some kind of musical aspect by creating a little motif. It's a little sloppy and lacking still, I think, but we're getting the point. We're building on it. So I'm using things like anticipation of the next chord, double passing tones, and just repeating that. Let's do something like this. To break out, very Wagnerish kind of half cadence. And we also use an augmented 6 in inversion. Breaking out. So that does sound like a Wagner ending to a sequence because he uses that a lot. like a harmonic lick. He breaks out of sequences all the time, doing that 6, 4, 5. Here's an example right here. But he does this all the time. Here's another piece of music he does this in. Right here. Same exact move. Harmonic lick. So let's review. We're assuming we've somehow landed in A minor, and we're just going to now use this pivot. Maybe silence, fade away in silence, repeat at the octave. Now go into this full sequence here. Breakout. So on the breakout, I do cover this harmonic move in my chromatic harmony course. On this 2 half diminished in F sharp minor, go for that inverted augmented 6 to the 6-4 1 chord, and then the 4 chord in first inversion. I believe I changed it to that instead of the 6, then the 4, then the 5. Still a very Wagner-like ending. Everything's written out there for you of the bass sequence. You do whatever you want and break out whenever you want. I'm going to use a full strings patch, but these patches are just not really good at doing contrapuntal kind of moves, or fast moves for that matter. These patches just seem to be overall aimed at static hold kind of writing. Anyway, it's a personal preference, but I figured I'd do this. We're assuming we're in A minor, so let's go through the sequence with strings. Maybe a fade out followed by silence. The variation down lower. Silence. Go into the sequential pattern. And that's as far as we're going to go. One option would be to repeat this chain now again once you've broken out of it a little bit. Another option would be to do something completely different. So that's up to you. You got a full chain here. You could actually cycle through the entire circle of fifths in a clockwise manner and will eventually end up in A minor again. One reason you break out of these never-ending chains is because it actually gives it a compositional kind of interest. If you're just constantly repeating something on loop, with these never-ending pivot chain modulations, you're eventually going to bore the listener. They're not going to want to listen to 10 minutes of the same thing over and over again. And one of the best ways to do that is to actually just come to a temporary closure and then start repeating the sequence again, or go into something different depending on your piece of music.